recently, was an article and news on escapes at the Clinton prison. And it must have brought back memories for you for Bucky Phillips. For 5 months in 2006, he really captured the news cycle, let's say. And obviously we were very much a part of that here in Chautauqua County.
Yes, and that was a very frustrating time for me. And that was a time of little communication between law enforcement agencies, and caused a lot of aggravation and frustration for me personally and my fellow sheriff from Chautauqua County. And we just didn't believe, I still, to this day, that should have been handled differently. And I've been very outspoken about it.
So for those who may not know, Bucky Phillips is a household name for some of us, but maybe can you give a little background on kind of who he was and what he did?
Well, I don't call him Bucky because he liked that. I call him Ralph, that's his given name. Ralph Phillips was a lifelong criminal, and he had been charged with various crimes over the years. Didn't have a lot of violent crime, but he was incarcerated for, I believe, a property crime, and was put on parole, and was being held at the Erie County Holding Center in Buffalo, Erie County. And he was made a trustee because he was soon to be released, and was actually, the crime was not a violent crime, it was a property crime. So I think he had a week left maybe before he was released. I don't recall the exact time, but a very short period of time. We learned later that he thought he was going to get violated and held even longer, but he escaped from the Erie County Holding Center. Actually, it's the Erie County Prison or Pen. And he did it by, he was in a real minimum security area, a kitchen area, and he cut through a thin layered roof and crawled out and got loose. And I remember getting a call from Erie County saying, hey, Sheriff, can you put your helicopter in the air? We're looking for Ralph Phillips. And I said, no, I won't. I said, why not? Because he's not going to be standing out there waiting for a helicopter to look for him. We know this guy. Just lay off. He'll show up. He'll show up in within a few days. People will be talking about him. Well, obviously that recommendation wasn't taken. They sent their helicopter down, hovered around, and then the rest became history. And he ended up killing a New York State trooper, actually shooting 3, killing 1. And it was the summer from hell.
What was the moment that tipped it off? I mean, when you obviously got him towards the Pennsylvania-New York border, right? As I recall. What was the moment that kind of said?
Well, there were so many of them. Near misses, cases where sharing information and working in unison would have captured him much earlier, but information was held and those people responsible are no longer working in law enforcement. But so I'm not trying to give a black eye to one particular agency or another. There's unbelievably professional men and women in the law enforcement community. But there were a lot of near misses because of the lack of information. The day he was caught was just a lot of things happened the right way. He had been actually traveling back and forth between Pennsylvania and New York. There had been a burglary at a gun store in Ellington, and he had taken some high-powered weapons, very high-powered weapons, and it was believed he was storing some of them in Pennsylvania. The Warren County Sheriff's Office in Pennsylvania were on alert and actually had extra patrol. A gentleman that lived in Warren County reported to 911 there that he thought somebody was breaking into his garage, and fortunately he didn't confront that person because it was Ralph Phillips, and he stole his car, or tried to steal his car. He ended up with a stolen car, and state police sent a unit because the Warren County chased this car, and he abandoned it, and then he went and stole another car. He was good at that. One time, I think he took our people in state police and he stole 12 different cars during this time. This was years before, but anyway, he could get it in a hot wire car quickly. So the state police sent a unit down the old Route 62, and the trooper said, the car approached them. One trooper, I'm told, said to the other, we're stopping that car, and it was Phillips. So they turned around on him and off to the races. And he came into Chautauqua County, and they came up to the borough in Frewsburg. One of my patrol were actually unknowing that this chase was going on. saw this car come zooming through the intersection. And he said, oh boy, you know, I'm gonna go get him, thinking he was a local speeder or DWI, and then saw the troop car behind him. Well, he was familiar with the area and was able to report exactly where they went and where they were. And Phillips ended up bailing out of the car. The trooper took a shot at him. I think Phillips pointed a gun at the state trooper, and the trooper shot a round at him and didn't hit him. And then he went into the woods. And that's when we finally had a cooperative, multi-jurisdictional effort, because we set up a unified command post actually at the Masonic Lodge in Frewsburg, and we swarmed in. One of the things that I was big about was the aviation piece of it at that point. Now it's time to put your helicopters in the air. And we kept him pinned down, because his MO was, when he got chased, he'd abandon his car and then run as far as and as fast as he could go, because he knew what cops did. They came in and swarmed around, set up a perimeter. He was already gone out of the perimeter. And that happened several times during his summer. But that day, we fixed that. We put State Police of Pennsylvania put a helicopter in the air. We put ours in the air. And I believe that New York State Police brought a helicopter, and we took shifts, keeping 2 birds in the air the whole time, pinned him down, brought in a ton of manpower, and then ultimately he was caught by a Warren County Sheriff's deputy, and they surrendered.
Now, I think it was on a Friday. Why do I remember that? Because they announced it at the Reg Linnaeus Civic Center. It was some sort of major event, hundreds of people there, and that was the lead announcement.
Yeah. They announced it at local football games, and I learned that later that like at Southwestern School they announced it. They announced it several. And I'll tell you, Greg, one of the most, I guess, touching experiences I had as a law enforcement officer for the years that I have been was after the Bucky Phillips capture. I left the command post. I was one of the last to leave, and came up through the Berg in Frewsburg, and the streets were lined with local residents applauding. And you know, it was touching. I had to choke back the tears.